So if you're planning your will, if you already have a will and you're going over it, maybe looking for some points to amend, you should probably leave your house to your executor. That is a great planning strategy that a lot of people don't use, and it comes up back to bite their family in the end. So while that may seem like a very good thing to do, leaving your house to your kids, it ends up placing an unintended burden on them. So the reason for that is twofold, really. One, title vests immediately in beneficiaries for real property. So what that means is if you pass away on March 1, your kids receive legal title to your home if they're your beneficiaries right away. So that's conveyed on the chain of title with the Register of Deeds office or in the clerk's office on the day that your will and your death certificate are submitted for probate. And ownership relates back to your date of death. So if you pass away on March 1 and your will and your death certificate are submitted on May 1, the chain of title will reflect May 1 as the date that title has actually changed hands, but ownership will relate back to March 1. So why that's important is there's a common misconception with kids who come into my office and ask for some help with probate that they can just continue to use mom's money to pay mom's mortgage. So that's not the case, and actually the clerk is going to frown upon that when you actually go through the probate process. The reason for that is the home now belongs to the kids, and they take that with everything that comes with it. So if it has a mortgage, the kids now are responsible for paying the mortgage. If it has tax coming due, they got to pay for the taxes. If it has insurance, they're paying for the insurance, et cetera, et cetera. Everything that comes due each month is now payable by the children. So the reason why they can't continue to use mom's money is because mom's money is now part of mom's estate, and those are estate assets. So the clerk will not allow, because the law doesn't allow, estate assets to be used to pay for non-estate assets. So the kids are now individually responsible for the mortgage, and that likely was not budgeted for. So they're probably paying for their own home, they're paying their own expenses, and their budget makes that work. But when you lump another mortgage on top of that, you could end up placing a huge burden on them. And as everybody knows, you can't sell a house in a day. It usually takes months, sometimes years, to get a house on and off market. So while these expenses are coming due, your kids are having to take care of them. Sometimes they can't. Sometimes if someone passes in the fall, even if there's no mortgage on the home, their tax bill is going to come due in January, usually the first week of January. So at the beginning of last month, all of these tax bills were due, especially in Wake County. So the other issue is, do your kids really even want the house? So if there isn't any sentimental value, most kids are looking at a house for its value, not for its potential to be kept and maintained. They're likely going to sell it at some point, especially if there are several siblings. So if mom leaves behind 3 kids, each of the kids, if they're taking, if it's something in the will along the lines of all of my real property to my then living children in equal shares, then you have 3 kids taking 3 equal shares in a house. Well, you can't really split a house 3 ways. The only way to do that is through a sale of the house. So when children receive a home, they're usually looking at the value that it holds, rather than functionally keeping it and renting it out or just kind of having it there for sentimental purposes. So unless it's a family home that's really been a part of the family's lives for several decades, children really just aren't going to want it. They have their own home and they're perfectly fine. So the easiest way, if your intention is just to convey value, is to leave the home to your executor. The reason for that is it's going to allow the executor to put the home up for sale right away. It's also going to allow the executor to pay for the expenses of the home during the pendency of that sale. So as the mortgage is coming due, the executor is going to be able to use estate assets to pay for it, because it's an estate asset in and of itself, the home is. So as the expenses are coming due, the estate assets can be used for it. So in this sense, you can use mom's money to pay for mom's mortgage. So you have to really look at what your intention is. If you just want to convey value to your kids, the best way to do that is to leave the house to the executor with specific instructions to sell the home and disperse the proceeds. So if that's your intention, that's what you should be doing. If your will says something along the lines of all of my real property to my kids in equal shares, then you're potentially giving them a substantial burden instead of a great benefit. If your intention is just to convey value, leave all your real property to the executor. The executor will sell everything and disperse the proceeds, and then your children can get a large benefit, being sale proceeds rather than the expenses of real property. So keep that in mind as you're planning.